minutes now, and they're nice and pliable. Again, like I told you before, I was told once that you soak leather till the bubbles stop coming out, and that seems to run true. I like to soak them in warm water because it speeds up the process a little bit. We're going to turn this boot for you. I straighten her out like this to give me a place to work, and then I just fold the tops in like that and roll it down until I've got a sizable amount in there, and I reach in from the bottom and kind of pull and push. They have tools for doing this. The big factories use like a vacuum tube, but you can take about a 12-inch piece of 4-inch plastic sewer pipe and cut a hole in a counter or a bench or something and run yourself a couple rods up through the center of it to where you would slide your boot over it, hook something on that rod on this here, and you'd have a strap on the bottom, and you just take your foot up and step and pull up at the same time, and it would suck it right side out inside the tube. I don't know, I find this just as easy. Plus, when you're working with your lighter leathers, again, there's a good chance of marring them doing it that way. It's not hard this way when it's wet. And we've got a boot. There's your side seams. It still wants to fold in, so you're going to have to work it a little bit. Work your counters so they'll roll around a little like this. Now I usually take and put it back in the water for about another 10 minutes and move on to the lasting part of it. So we'll throw them back in the hot water for a few more minutes and get the lasting jack all set up for you, and we'll last these up.
When he said hot, he means just real good and warm, not real hot, because
Yeah,
some
not
leathers
boiling.
don't like real hot water.
Boiling hot, you make it boiling hot and you'll have shrivel that piece of nothing on you, so hot to your hand. Okay, I pulled them out of the sink. They've soaked approximately another 10-15 minutes. Take and pull your lining free. Get in here and pull all the rubber cement free that you've stuck clean up into the toe up here. All the way around. Same here. Reach in here and pull this free. At this time I notch the counters. Remember when we started it, we explained some tools to you. This is a tin snips notcher, and I just go in and notch them all the way around. I've done it both ways, not notching them and doing them this way, and this just makes for a much nicer, flatter seam when you're done. Doesn't weaken the boot in any way.
I find that it helps to keep the counter even too, because you've got the same depth of notches all over.
Right. Just like so. Okay, and I generally straighten my boot out a little, get my side seams lined up, find out which way the boot lays as far as top goes. Well, that one's hanging pretty straight. Take and fold the vamp lining back, and just take baby powder, lightly sprinkle the inside here. That's so when you're pulling the lining separate from the vamp cover, it'll slide. And we do with the inside of the vamp a little bit. About like so.
Because of the snowstorm.
A little bit, huh? Now we're going to take a last here. Place your last in so you're about an inch up on the counter of the last, like this. You're going to want to center it, center your seams. Now we'll take and put a tack in it here, or a staple. I'll show you. You want it level this way too. You don't want your last twisted one way or another this way, because you're going to start lasting it crooked immediately then. So you want your side seam center with this part of your last back. If you try and center it with the front, remember your last goes crooked. So we're center here, and we're center here. Same depth down on both sides. From here, we put her on our elastic pin. Try and pull all your slack out by hand. Get a hold of your lining and pull on it a little bit. I generally take and run that notch that we put in the counter right up over the toe. Now I take my wide European pliers. I pull the lining first a little bit, not hard, just a little. And I grab them both. And I pull till I'm fairly tight down here. So your first pull is going to be right up over the toe. You've got plenty of leather here.
I didn't have the good fortune to find a pair of European pliers like he uses, so I used the very wide pincers that I got from USM.
They look identical to this, except they're just a larger version of it. The next pull I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the outside of the ball of the foot. Again, I pull a little bit on the lining. I grab both of them. Now don't take it all. Don't pull as much as you can here because you're going to warp your boot out of shape. Just pull up till you feel a little tension on it here. Now we're going to go to the inside. So the second pull went to the outside. This third pull is going to go to the inside here, right across the ball of the foot. Again, I pull up on the lining first. Now here's where I try and take quite a bit of the slack out underneath. You'll see me feeling under here constantly. This is how I judge how much I'm pulling.
You can also tell if you got a wrinkle in your lining by feeling under there. You want to keep feeling under there because it tells you a lot.
Okay, we've made our first pull across the toe, second pull to the outside, third pull here, and you'll notice there's about the same amount of leather hanging over here, okay? Pull it off and check and see how square you are. Check and see that you've got your tongue medallion in the center of you don't have one of these seams farther out than the other. You want your toe fairly smooth. This wrinkle in here will all come out, so don't worry about it. Just eyeball your boot. Make sure you've got it in the center where you want it.
Don't be afraid to pull your tacks out and start over either.
Oh, no. A hurried job here is twice as hard to fix later. I come back to my toe, and I pull up on her, and sometimes just turning your lasting pliers one way or another will get it to lay flat. Don't worry about making a few seams here. We're going to take them out when we put the toe box in. Now here I start pulling pretty good. If you were working with lightweight leather, you aren't going to have to treat it a little more gingerly, and you may not be able to use your small pliers. They generally say when you pull on leather and you see beads of water coming out of it, you've pulled enough. That works sometimes. Don't count on that rule of thumb all the time, because I've looked for it on kangaroo and ended up ripping the boot. I just push up on the toe of it like this with my leg, and that locks it on the pin to a degree. Doing exactly the same thing I did on the other side. Working back to those 3 staples we put in, the 2 on the ball, I mean.
Also, when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're not dragging your insole up away from the glass. If you feel that you're doing that, you got to get in there and push your insole back down.
In through this area here. You lift your lining out like this, and where you've channeled it here, sometimes if you're taking too much time, your insole gets wet and that'll start curling up on you. If you take just a simple heel pry and lift it back and go in there and push her down like this, you can. Then you work her down a little bit here. Back to that shaping hammer again. Don't use a hammer that's got a knurled surface on the front of it. You do that with some decorative leather, some soft leather, and you're going to make another pair of boots. Okay, we've got our toe. We've got my toe work down here. Now we're going to take and pull the nails we put in the counter here. Take your hammer and just tap your last down flush so that the edge of your counter cover is flush with the bottom of your last. And you stop there. I take my European pliers again, and normally I pull out the nails that I put in the ball of the foot, right here. And I go just behind the ball of the foot, right behind the break of your last, where you'd measure for the waist of your foot, and I pull back towards the toe, like so. Again, I'm feeling down here for wrinkles, making sure I'm getting it smooth. And I come back up on the ball and I pull her again. Come over on the other side. Again, just about where you'd be measuring for the waist measurement. And I pull back towards the toe. If you notice, if you pay attention when you're doing it, you may notice your insole pulling up. Like right here, it's pulling up. And if you just slack up a little bit and tap her with a hammer, she'll lay back down. Okay. By pulling back this way, you've taken and you've drawn a great deal of the waist of the boot, the wrinkles in the waist of the boot out. See here? Now we're going to move to the counter. We have a metal bottom in the heel. So when I pull my counter up, I use brass tacks around the counter and I leave them in. There are bootmakers that pull them up, tack them, then pull all the tacks and put wooden pegs in. For quite a while I thought that was the way to do it, except that I've discovered I end up taking out, sanding down, pounding down as many wooden pegs as I do the tacks. So why make more holes than you have to? I like to tack them, leave the tacks in. I use about a 4-ounce brass tack. Any tacks that go through into the insole and stay there, I use brass in because it doesn't rust out as bad, doesn't oxidize out. Here I would use the small pliers, and I pull it up good and snug, and I usually end up with, a good inch. I've gone just past where I've cut my notches in. Those notches are an inch deep. And I pull just the counter cover, not the counter, so that you take any wrinkles out of the counter cover that you've got in it. I work on her a little bit here. You're bending a pretty good chunk of leather, so you've got to beat her down flat a little bit. Here's the only place that I use a hammer with a knurled surface on it. It's when I'm pounding the tacks in here. Okay, I've got one in the center, right in the middle. Now I'm going to go to the outside here a little bit, and I bring it towards the center.
Now, if this was lighter leather, he'd be using his shaping hammer to pound that leather around there.
Yes. As far as learning what to do with what utensil to use, that only comes with experience. I can't tell you what to do for every leather, because you're just going to have to take that piece of leather and work with it. That's practical knowledge. That's something you're going to pick up as you make more boots. Like I told you before, this is a very good hide for you to start with. Very forgiving hide. I've got a little bit of a wrinkle right here. If you take and work your pliers into it, pull her out, you can work the wrinkle right out.
You'll be surprised how much those wrinkles will just kind of grow together when you pound them around like that.
Okay, I've secured the back of the counter down very well. Well, I've got, if you can get a shot down in here, you'll notice that this edge is a little bit lower than this edge. This is the taller edge here. So my first pull is going to be on the low side, which is right here. I take my shank lasting pliers that we talked about earlier, and I'm going to make my first pull on the outside of the shank of the boot, right where your instep would be. And I just pull her straight across, work on my seam a little bit here. I'm going to pull my edge of my side of my counter up approximately the same distance I pulled the back of my counter. After I get this one lasted, I'll show you a way you can lay it out with your silver marking pen so that you can take a little bit of the guesswork out. It's the way I used to do it before I had lasted enough of them to get an experienced feel towards it, and that's what a lot of this is just a feel for what you're doing. If you take a tape measure and measure from here down, from your counter seam down the height you want, which in this particular case is going to run about 2 to 2 1/4 inches from here down to your flat here, and then mark it on the other side the same distance, your 2 1/4. You're going to know when you make this pull on the side where to stop.
Now that height measurement isn't always the same on all sides.
No, it'll grow the larger the boot gets.
But you can put just some marks there so you know where to gauge, so you get them both the same. Until you figure out how far they are down.
And we just take the wrinkles out of this side, pull the rest of the counter down. Now we're going to come over on the inside, and I'm going to go up again on the instep, make a pretty good pull. If you've got your boot square and you know you aren't going to take it apart anymore, you can trim some of this excess off. Don't trim anything until you're absolutely sure that you want to leave it as is. Pull your boot off and look at it. Just look down the back, sight down the back, and make sure that this point and this point are about the same height from the counter, from the bottom of your counter here. Make sure you've got your boot setting on your last square, that the last isn't twisted inside your boot. Look down inside your boot and make sure you've got about the proper amount of cone height sticking out here in front. You usually end up with about a 1/2 inch of the top of the cone protruding out this way into the middle of your boot.
I might be able to shoot that if you hold it open with me. Tip it upwards a little. Right there. That's good. That's good. Okay, that's good.
You'll notice also too that your side seams are running up parallel. See, I don't have one this way and one this way. They're right across from each other. Finish up the counter here. Just gonna work the rest of the wrinkles out.
Also, while we're right here, it makes me think of the height of your lasting pin. If you want it just enough so you can put some pressure on it with your knee when you're working a last, just like he's been doing. You just keep cutting off until you get about the right height.
Better to make her high and cut down than to try and figure out a way to add it later.
Yeah.
The first one I made out of wood with a 1/2 inch metal dowel metal pin in the top of it, and I would just kind of clamp it between my legs And I discovered I spent a great deal of time chasing that son of a gun. Doug come up with the idea of having a platform to stand on, and this works very, very well. You'll discover that almost all the lasting jacks, pins, whatever that you come up with, you're going to build, you're going to design for your own personal shop what fits your method of working best. Okay, see how she's setting square here? I've got the same depth here that I've got here. My side set's good. I've got a good line here. This flows nicely. At this time, I take my shaping hammer and I work my counter into place. I'm not beating the boot to death, but I am tapping it pretty firm. I also work my side seams down in this area so that they lay pretty flat.
Well, that shaping hammer you got is an antique. The ones that you get now aren't shaped exactly like that, but they do have smooth faces on both sides.
Pull down on your top a little bit just to take some of the wrinkles out. I'm going to take it this time and trim my heel. It gets a lot harder to trim when it's dry. I know approximately the width shank I'm going to be using, so I trim them now.
You can lay your shank on there too to get an idea if you aren't used to the size you're using.
I like to use spring steel for my shanks. Here's one of them right here. I can bend it to the shape I want. When I put my cover on it and my filler on it and everything, it doesn't move. The trouble with a nail is it's round to start with and it wants to keep turning. I have boots coming in here with nails for a shank all the time that the nail, I've even found some nails up under the ball of the foot that have moved around. The only way you could use a nail and have it stay put would be to flatten both ends of it and then put a nail on each end of it, so it couldn't move.
And of course when a nail is bent, it stays bent, where spring steel tries to come back.
Also, if you've got somebody that works on a shovel or something all day, he can rebend that nail to a higher curve than was intended, and it doesn't come back. If you're working with spring steel, he'll bend it, but it'll come back where it belongs.
That's something also you need to kind of choose to your customer. If the customer is a very heavy person, you need to use the heavier triple rib shanks.
We've got a boot. Now, when I last the other boot, I'll show you what I look for. I take it off and I compare. I'm going to take this and set it up here on something level so you can get some idea of the way it slopes back. Trim some of this excess off here so we don't have quite as much to fight with. Okay, if we were to bring this boot up level to the heel height that we want, you'll notice how the side seam and everything straightens out. See how she's sloping back now? If you take this boot and you work it back and forth, you're going to notice what I was talking about when we were cutting your vamps as to this point here. If you were to go to an extremely tall heel, this line's going to have to come down some a little. Not much, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch is a big change. If you drop the heel down, Your line's going to want to come up a little bit. So you've got one done. You're going to,
Once you point it at me. A little more. Okay.
you're going to take and last the other one up, and you're going to use this as a guide. Again, if you want to, you can take and measure down whatever counter height you've come up with. Mark out your other boot before we start so that you know how far down to pull it. You do exactly the same thing. If you have a boot that is setting farther back, you want the other one to set it farther back. If you last this one the same way as you did your first one, they're going to set the same. If you pull in the same direction, pull in the same sequence, they're going to set the same. Where you will run into trouble is if you were to last a boot and pull the counter down farther before you pull the instep down. The boot's going to set back a little farther. You're going to want to try and draw that last up into your boot top level. You don't want to draw it this way, you don't want to draw it this way, you want to draw it level. So that's why you're going to make those pulls from the ball of the waist back before you make a pull on the counter, because it sets the top of the boot down. Go ahead and start on the other one. I've taken and put it in a plastic bag to keep it warm and moist. Makes it a lot more pliable. Again, I'll work the counters a little bit so they roll a little easier on the side seam here. Pull your lining loose again. And your counter. This time I notch my counters again. These notching pliers you'll want if you're going to make a lot of boots. We've cut them by hand for a few years, and this is just a neat trick.
Now we also tried ear notching pliers. I was accustomed to those when I was a kid, and I thought that would work great, but we found that the new ones they're making are aluminum, and we sucked the handles right off of those rascals. So they just about have to be these tin notching pliers.
Yeah. They aren't cheap. About 40 bucks if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's 38 something I think they were.
Going to talcum the vamp again. And the vamp lining. Start everything out level. Don't leave it in a big ball. It just makes more work for you later. Again, we're going to place our last approximately an inch up on the counter, making sure that everything's square again. Yes, you can use a tack hammer. I'm afraid I'm terribly spoiled. I'll use the tack hammer on this one just to show you it can be done. I pull my lining up again. This is a time when it's very, very easy to twist your boot. I mean, you can pull more this way, pull more this way. If you're working with a boot that has a toe bug on it, a wingtip on it, once you get it centered like this and the first pull made, then you can turn the boot over and look, and if the wingtip looks a little crooked, pull a little more this way. You can vary it a little bit until you look down on the top of the boot and it looks symmetric of what you want. But start out square back here on the shank area of the boot. Start out square.
If you are just having the devil of a time with one that just won't seem to line up, if you change sides sometimes, put it on the other last, sometimes everything will just clear up.
Seems like some are meant to be lefts and some are meant to be rights. We really don't know why that is. Pulling the lining a little bit. First pull is going to be over the toe. Now you should end up with approximately the same amount of leather that you had on the other one. If you don't, you've done something wrong. That's going to be your first clue. If you end up with a boot here that you just don't have enough leather on, you shorted your heel measurement. You trimmed too much off on the side. So that was one of the reasons I was emphasizing that heel measurement so critically. If you get into this part of the game and you don't have approximately this much material hanging over the toe and over the sides when you make these first 3 pulls, you're in trouble. You've done something wrong. Okay, we're going to the outside. Pull the lining up a little bit first, then the outside. Again, I don't take all the stretch out of it. Now I gotta fight with this tack hammer. Shame on you. It's alright. I done it for, I think it was approximately 2 years that way.
Some of these old shoemakers are hard to convince to use the new equipment to start with, and then they won't quit using it after they get it.
That's true. Now these are just shoe tacks. They aren't brass. Brass tacks are too expensive to do this with. You can also pull these out and reuse them. I went through the same box for a year or better. Again, pull it off. Make sure that you've got it square here and square with the toe. In general, look at the boot. Make sure you've got everything symmetric and that you aren't twisting it at this stage, because you're placing the boot now. You're getting everything square. You're going to have a great deal more of the cone showing in here now because you've taken the boot and you've turned it up and set it down on it like this. We haven't pulled it square yet, so don't be alarmed if you look down inside and see. Let's see if we can get a shot at this one here.
You're up, and you got a big wrinkle on that inside there. Down a little more, down a little more, down. There we go, over right there. Okay.
So you've got almost double the cone sticking out that you had when you're done. Okay, we're going to work the toe in again, remember? I start from the toe back.
That tapping he's doing along there, he's laying that insole back down.
This little trick of twisting your lasting pliers comes in awful handy, especially when you work with your bigger boots where you may be running a little shorter material here and there. It just lets you twist it and lay the leather down. Be careful when you're working with light leathers again. Now you'll see the fold I've got right here. I'm going to draw this up like this. I'm going to turn this leather and I'm going to fold it all into the toe area here. So, you know, you're not going to keep drawing this back and then fold it this way. This has all got to come out.
If you start at the front, you can kind of lay the folds right against each other too, up over there. And that helps get rid of some of that extra material right to start with. Remember on this toe area that you got to get it, all the wrinkles back down past the line of where the welt is going to be. That groove in the insole that you put in. You got to get all your wrinkles up down below that line.
Some of your textured leathers, like shark especially, you're not going to want to pull extremely hard on this because you take a lot of the texture right out of it. Alright, we've got our toe laid down. You'll notice the area, turn her this way, the area that we're going to be sewing in is laying nice and flat. Don't worry about these wrinkles up here. The area we're going to be sewing in is nice and flat. Now we're going to come back to just past the ball again, where you'd be measuring the waist, and pull back towards the toe. You may have to pull the one or two that you put in the waist area, I mean in the ball area, because you do put a bit of a crease in your leather right then. You have to work that out. Having the different size pliers allows you to get in sometimes where your big European or your wide jaw pliers just don't fit. I'll go just back to the waist on the outside.
Your first few times doing this, you'll want to turn the boot over a lot more and look at the way it's lining up a lot more often than he does, because you can pull it back and forth pretty easily with this lasting process.
Very easy to get it out of alignment, very easy to get it twisted. Don't be afraid to take smaller bites, you know. If you've got to pull all this out and take a little more slack out on both sides, fine. Don't be afraid to do it a little less at a time here. Okay, see, we've got your toe down. Now we start working on the instep. Pull our tacks out of our heel. These nails, shoe tacks, and staples come out of plastic pretty easy. Out of wood, sometimes you work on it a little bit. Just taking it down level with the bottom of the insole now. Now this one's setting pretty square, so it really doesn't matter which side I start pulling on first. I always pull on the side that is the lowest when I get to this point. If this side would have been lower, I'd start here. This one's setting pretty square, so it really doesn't matter. Also learn to appreciate having that extra hand. Sometimes just the time it takes you to drive these tacks in, you lose your bite. Don't be afraid to put a few extra ones in if it means that it's going to lay a little smoother.
Yeah, now when I do that, I hook the long handle of that lasting plier under my knee. That gives me my extra hand that I seem to need all the time.
That's what it's for. I've seen bootmakers do this and take another pair of pliers and pull here and pull here and pull here. This just gives you a little extra. It's long handled for leverage. With these shank lasting pliers, it's very easy to rip your leather because you've got so much leverage, so treat them gently. Okay, we're up to our instep. Check inside, make sure you're getting down to about the right cone height in there, as far as that approximate ½ inch sticking out like we were talking about. Trim a little of this leather off.
If it's on your first few pairs, don't be real anxious about trimming that out of there until you're absolutely sure that they're the way you want them. Because after it's cut off, it's too late.
You bet. And if you've got to take it apart and do it over, you say, oh shucks, because you've already done it. Now we're going to pull on the counter, cover again. Now here's where you can upset the balance of the two boots. If you take and pull this one much more than you have your other boot, it's going to lean back farther. So you can do it one of two ways. You can eyeball it, or you can take a tape measure and mark around your counter cover with that silver marking pen to show you where you want the fold to go, and then you'll get it exact. Don't be afraid to measure. After you're done, nobody's going to know that you measured except you. And we all did it to start with. First one in the center, bring the sides to the center.
Now he's using brass tacks again on it because these are permanent. This is permanent on the back end.
And this side to the center. This is also one of the reasons why you will skive that bottom edge of your counter itself down, is because if you don't, you're going to have troubles getting it to lay flat. You'll have troubles notching it, and you'll have trouble. Period. Okay. Take your two boots and measure this way if you like. Put your medallion up, the top of your heel medallion together, and measure down. See if you've got them laying about the same. Now we'll work on the side. If it's a smaller boot, I have a tendency to pull these side seams forward a little bit because you've got such a tiny heel heel insole pocket, heel seat that you're working with, that you need all the room you can to get this big bulge out here. So sometimes I'll take and I'll just grab it up front here and I'll pull it forward. It's a lot easier to get wrinkles out of this area than your counter. It helps get it to lay flat again. Back to our small pliers and work this wrinkle out. We showed you both boots being lasted because very seldom do two boots last the same. I mean, feel the same. You're working with, I don't care how close to the same spot you cut the same leather, it doesn't feel the same. It stretches a little different, it stretches a little more, stretches a little less.
That's the same thing we were mentioning about. You can't seem to get it to line up on one boot if you just trade them. Sometimes it's just like a miracle. You just can't believe it. So easily on one and absolutely not on the other one.
If it's your second boot, you're just out of luck. You're just going to have to sit and work with it.
With the patterns and such that you people have received, there's really not very much odd of you not ending up with a usable boot the first time, as our first ones were not what you could call usable boots. But with these patterns and stuff that we've sent you people, you're almost assuredly going to end up with a usable boot if you follow the instructions.
We're just about done. After these are lasted, you've trimmed your excess off, you're going to want to let them dry 2 or 3 days. The counters take a little bit longer to dry. One more wrinkle to go. You'll find this twisting technique of your lasting pliers extremely helpful in the counter area. You're already turning it and laying it flat.
Also, you people might want to mark your insoles before you start lasting of where your metal ends so that you don't start putting tacks where they're not going to crimp.
And expect them to crimp and then leave them in and go to pull your last, and when you've got lasting tacks sticking up in the bottom of on your plastic, it's just that much harder to pull your last out. Some of the boots you make, it's going to be difficult enough to get the last out without having nails sticking in the bottom of it. I'm trimming the excess off again. Side seams. It doesn't hurt to go around and pound the rest of your seam if you want. Lay a little flatter. Don't be afraid if it looks like you didn't skive your front vamp seam enough, if it looks like it's swelled up, it's just because there's extra layer there. When it dries and water gets a chance to dry out, this seam will lay down again. So if it looks a little bulky now, don't panic until it's dry. Then we stretch our tops down a little bit. Now they look like boots. From here, like I say, you're going to let them dry a couple days. Let them dry till they're dry. It makes for the next couple steps a little easier. I think we've covered the lasting end of it pretty good. When you set them up like this, you're going to want them both to set at the same angle. You're going to want them to lean back at the same angle. If this boot was setting like this, you lasted it wrong. Take it apart and relast it again. Pull more on the front of your, pull more on the instep part of your boot. By the same token, if it's the other direction, you didn't bring your counter down tall enough. I mean, far enough down on it. just like that.
I like to roll up cardboard and stick in my tops. He doesn't do that, but I think it makes them round out better.
On the top here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cut a long strip and I roll it up in a coil and stick it in there, and then kind of unwind it, and it puts a little pressure on them to make them round out better.
Like this.
It does slow down the drying time some though. And
This will accomplish. Also, when we get done, I take and I wet the tops again and I put them on a treeing, some treeing tools I've got, and I reshape my tops that way. But yeah, it forms your top more like this.
And we were also going to discuss the different solutions for the...
Oh yes. Sometimes water won't do it, and you won't be able to work the skin. Water buffalo is a good example of a leather that will not work with water, or not work well. If you take they call it a wetting solution, we've discovered it's nothing more than stretch-all, and soak, say, water buffalo in stretch-all, it'll work very, very well. You have to work a little faster with it because it does evaporate. But when you find a leather that just will not work when you're using just plain water with it, go to your stretch-all solutions and try soaking your boot in the stretch-all solution before you last it, not the water. It's an alternative.
Also, you might want to test that stretch-all. I used some magic on a pair and I ruined them because it took the finish off. So you might test it because it's not good for everything.
Okay.